Hello there, friends. It's Jimmie Maverick, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Today, I've got my good friend Zach from Fantasy Price Check. We're going to be talking about huge value players for the upcoming fantasy season. You're not going to believe where you're going to be able to get these guys and how much value they're going to offer your team. So stay tuned for that. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmie Maverick.
All right. Hello there, friends. It's Jimmie Maverick coming at you with the Fantasy Maverick podcast from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And today I've got a special guest. I've got Zach from Fantasy Price Check on the line with me today. We're going to be talking huge value fantasy players for the upcoming season. Now, I got to tell you, Zach, I do very much enjoy your videos on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, go to fantasypricecheck or just search for Fantasy Price Check. You'll be able to find his videos. What I like about them is I call them like little fantasy appetizers. It's just like a little 5-minute video about one player, and you're very thorough in your analysis. And I do very much enjoy watching those. So if you haven't done so already, go to YouTube, check it out. Also on Instagram. What is your Instagram tag?
Let me try it again. At Fantasy Price Check on Instagram.
Oh, okay. There you go. Very easy. So definitely go check out his stuff. He's got good stuff here. So obviously, value, for me, it's one of the most important things I consider when I'm looking at players. I have my VORC score, which stands for value, outlook, reliability, and consistency. Value is 30% of the VORC score. And the way it works is in my app, my Perfect Fantasy Draft, you put in how your league scores points, and then it calculates that point schedule by the projected stats for each player, calculates the projected fantasy points, and then it ranks those players. So it makes it very easy to find who's undervalued, who's fair valued, and who's overvalued relative to their draft position. So when I go through it and I get all the information in, all of a sudden names just start popping out at me as being incredible values. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So I thought we'd start out. Zach, you can do yours first. I believe you got a guy from Pittsburgh.
All right. The first guy that I'm going to talk about is James Conner. And Jimmie, thanks for having on the show. I appreciate it. So looking into James Conner, what I like is he is a late 4th-round pick. He's currently being drafted after Le'Veon Bell, Mark Ingram, and David Johnson. And he's a guy that's been drafted in the 1st or 2nd round in the last 2 seasons. And this year we know why his ADP has taken a hit. He's seen as a guy that's not durable, and the Steelers draft an RB, which is also hurt his ADP. I'm about a guy that's missed 6 games in the last year and 3 games in the year before that. But we're not talking about major injuries, though. We're talking about a sprained ankle in 2018 and a sprained AC joint in 2019. So he doesn't have any major medical red flags. He's just a guy that's gotten a little banged up and has missed some time. When you look at a guy like Chris Carson, he's fractured a hip, and people are still taking him in round 3. Darius Geis is coming off 3 knee injuries in the last 2 years, and people are still taking him in round 7. So that's for crazy. James Conner in the 4th round, I think that's going to be a steal. And he's only 25 years old. He's in a contract year, and when he's healthy, he's an RB1. If you look at last year before injury, from weeks 1 to weeks 8, he was the RB9 in total points and the RB10 points per game, and that was with a lousy Steeler offense with no Big Ben. And in the year before that, from weeks 1 to week 13, before he injured his ankle, he was the RB5 in total points and the RB6 in points per game. So that shows you that he is top 10 RB material when he is healthy. The guy's just gotten a little banged up. And when you look at Conner's numbers compared to Todd Gurley and David Johnson, 2 other backs with injury concerns that are going ahead of Conner, Conner actually has them beat in yards per carry, yards after contact per attempt, and receptions per game. And I'm not too worried about Anthony McFarland either. He's a 4th-round rookie. I agree that he looks explosive and dynamic, but he's going to have a complementary role as a rookie this year. I don't think he's coming in and taking Conner's job. And Mike Tomlin isn't a big running back committee guy. He likes to use just one back. And if you're worried about Anthony McFarland, you could take Connor in round 4 and then take McFarland in round 12, and you have the Steelers backfield locked up. So I think James Conner is a great value this year. And being a late 4th round pick, I think that is great value for him.
Well, I got to say, I was a little shocked that you chose James Conner. Now, certainly the upside is there, but I'm wondering. My concern is not so much with James Conner; it's with the offense in general. Last year, obviously, Big Ben was out, and so we had 2 subpar backup quarterbacks playing that obviously were not as good. That helped defenses stack the line against the run game. But the offensive line was 27th in the league for run blocking, and that does not portend very well towards this year because they didn't really make any improvements to the offensive line. It's also one of the oldest offensive lines in the NFL, which really makes me sweat. And I know you talked about McFarland in there, but there's also Jalen Samuels and there's also Benny Snell. For me, that's a 4-headed committee, not a 2-headed committee. And man, if there's 3 or more, it's just a fantasy wasteland. So I know that the Pittsburgh history is they go with a bell cow, but you know what? Kansas City was also a team that did that, and last year they went away from that and they won the Super Bowl. And I think it's the trend. You're going to see it more and more, and I think that they're going to absolutely employ a committee in this backfield this year. It's going to be impossible to know who's going to be the guy on any given week. So that's my big concern. I have him going at ADP number 46. He's the 19th running back being taken off the board. But I got to tell you, man, I have him valued as my RB31. Just like
all right, you faded Conner a bit.
Down just a lot of downside risk just because of the crowded backfield, man. So I'm not sure if this is going to be a value play for you this year. But again, Steelers are my favorite team. I've always been a fan of the Steelers. They're the best run organization in the NFL. But I got to say, they got some real problems on the offense that just make me want to stay away. So let me go on to my first pick then. So my first pick is for huge value is Ronald Jones, who's currently going at ADP number 102. He's the 40th running back being taken off the board. And let me tell you, if you're looking for a cheap share of what could be a very explosive offense, I'm telling you, Tampa Bay just seems like it's going to be explosive this year. And I know that they drafted Keyshawn Vaughn, and it is going to be a shared backfield, probably a 55-45 split in Ronald Jones' favor. But I got to say, man, this year more than any other, because of the coronavirus, the established guys I think are at a huge advantage over any new player coming into the system. So I think just where his ADP is, he offers some great value. I've got him projected with about 193 touches, 32 catches on 45 targets. So he's already in the 240s for his opportunities with the ball. That makes him my running back number 24. So low end to a high end flex, just an incredible bargain in the 9th round. So, I got to say, man, Ronald Jones is definitely on my target list right now.
I like the Ronald Jones pick based upon ADP. I have 90th overall, round 8. And he had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. And he had a yards per carry average of 4 yards, 10 yards per reception. And if you look at the snaps with Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones got the lion's share of the snaps. He got 422 snaps compared to Peyton Barber's 347. And what I would expect is that Keyshawn Vaughn comes in and takes the snaps that Peyton Barber had, and Ronald Jones keeps the same workload. So I think you're looking at a guy that's going to get over 1,000 total yards and 6 touchdowns. And let's take a look at some of the finishes. Last year, he finished as the RB26 and was the RB33 in points per game. So I think that you're going to see a similar output or a similar finish this year. You're essentially getting an RB3 that you're getting at the price of an RB4. So that does present good value.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm excited for him. Now, who is next on your list?
The next guy I have on my list is a guy that I'm really excited about, more excited about than James Conner, and that would be Raheem Mostert. All right, so let me get into Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert is currently being drafted at the back of the 5th round. And a lot of people that don't believe in Raheem Mostert and say that Tevin Coleman is the better value who could be drafted in the 8th round. But I believe that Raheem Mostert is the guy for the 49ers this year. And the reason for that is the 49ers turned to Mostert during the final stretch of the season. Tevin Coleman was healthy during Mostert's stretch of dominance to close the season. Mostert was the starter for them. And the reason for this is because the 49ers changed offensive line scheme. Shanahan likes to use an outside zone scheme, which is where Mostert thrived due to his speed and explosiveness. That's why I'm so confident in Mostert being the guy for the 49ers in 2020 and Coleman seeing a minimum role as a 2 behind Mostert. If you look at Mostert's snaps, once he became the starter in Week 12, he went from 27% of the snaps to 55% of the snaps. And from weeks 14 to 17, Tevin Coleman never had him. And once Raheem Mostert took over from weeks 12 to 17, Mostert was the RB7. He had over 1,000 yards and touchdowns when he was barely playing for the first 11 weeks of the year. I'm projecting for him in 2020. I'm projecting 1,400 total yards, about 1,100 rushing and 300 receiving, along with 8 to 12 touchdowns. And what really opened my eyes to Mostert is, you've heard of Next Gen Stats, right?
Yes.
Players on field speed. And based on what he tracked, they made a list of the 10 most explosive runners. And the list goes like this. Number 1, Lamar Jackson. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. Number 3, Raheem Mostert. Then Kenyon Drake, Aaron Jones, and Christian McCaffrey's at number 9. This guy is completely left. The only knock on Mostert is projected volume. He's only 200 pounds, and he's not going to be able to handle 20 touches a game. He's going to be good for maybe 10 to 50 touches a game. However, I think he's going to be able to make up for those lack of touches with his efficiency like Alvin Kamara does. Here's some stats that popped off the page for me. He's first in yards created per touch, first in true yards per carry, first in run rate, and 5th in yards after contact per attempt. So Mostert has top 15 back written all over him. If you believe that he's going to be the starter for the 49ers, which I believe he is going to be, and he's currently being drafted right now as the RB26.
Yeah, I got to say, man, the more I read about Mostert, the more I like him for this season. He absolutely has a huge ceiling on a great run-first offense and he's shown what he can do, man. I mean, there was one game in the playoffs where he got 4 touchdowns in a game. And, I just think this offense, the way it's built, is there's going to be a lot of volume available for him. And I also like the fact that they got rid of Matt Breida. They shipped him. He went to Miami. So instead of there being a 3-headed monster in this backfield, it's really just 2. It's him and Tevin Coleman. I got to say, I'm not as impressed or as scared of Tevin Coleman as some others might be. Certainly, Coleman had a couple of explosive games. And that will happen during the course of this season, where Mostert will just disappear just because of the nature of the backfield and the way Kyle Shanahan runs it. But I got to say, man, he is going to be big. His ADP of number 59, I'm sure it's going to move up between now and when drafts actually start happening. But to get him in the 5th round of a draft is just such an incredible steal. I will take him 100% of the time he's available as my 5th round pick. It is, it's not a contract year for him this year, but his contract does expire after the 2021 season. So this is kind of like the season that he wants to shine on. And I also like that there's been an upward trend in his usage. So things are, like I said, very good for someone like Raheem Mostert. The biggest issue with him for me is consistency, that he will disappear in some games just because of the way Shanahan runs that offense. But otherwise, man, I love him as either your third or your fourth running back. Absolutely go get him. So
Absolutely.
kudos. Yeah. So my next pick, I've got a wide receiver here. And for this one, currently going at ADP 105, the 41st wide receiver coming off the board, Sterling Shepard of the New York Giants. Now, when I'm looking at value ranks in my app, it's this is a guy that will offer a massive return on your investment. One of the big things that I like so much about him is his level of consistency last year during the games that he played. Now, he only played 10 games, and he did deal with injuries last year, but in those 10 games, he never got less than 6 targets in a game, and in 6 of the 10, he had 10 or more targets. So that is wide receiver one potential upside if he can stay healthy. And it was good that he saw that kind of heavy volume with Daniel Jones, and so that really strikes me as very positive. So I have him down for about 110 targets, 71 catches, 789 yards, 6 touchdowns, which makes him a wide receiver 34, so a low-end flex. But I think the upside is just so tremendous here. Tremendous with his offense. I think this offense is really going to take a big step forward this year, especially Daniel Jones, that, there is, like I said, I think he's a great pick, and we're talking a 10th round pick in your draft. I would absolutely take that for sure.
Yeah, I like the pick in Sterling Shepard. He really wasn't on my radar really until you mentioned that he was one of your guys. And when I looked at him today, I came away extremely impressed with what he was able to do last year. You're probably looking, or people that are looking at him are probably only looking at last stat lines and saying, oh, okay, not that big of a deal, not something I want to draft. But again, he only played in 10 games. And what I love to see about him is his target volume. His target volume was unbelievable last year. When you look at his 16-game pace based upon what he was able to do last year, he would have had 132 targets for 91 receptions, 921 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That 132 target ranked 13th last year among wide receivers. And that stat line would have finished as a wide receiver 25. When I saw that, I was blown away, because I initially only saw in my analysis based on Darius Slayton how the different wide receivers were compared to each other. And what I saw was that Shepard was actually last in yards per target and yards per route run. So I saw him as the third wide receiver on the Giants. But when you actually look and see what his production was in those 10 games, I came away extremely impressed. So the way I see this Giants wide receiver core playing out, Darius Slayton's going to be that deep threat. He's going to be able to take the top off defenses. Daniel Jones is going to target him with the deep balls. So he's going to be that more explosive player. He's going to have more boom-bust games. And people are going to be excited about that upside. But if you want consistency, if you want reliability, if you want those guaranteed targets, then you want to go with a guy like Sterling Shepard, who is going to have way more value, particularly in PPR leagues, due to the target volume that he's going to get. So I love Sterling Shepard. I love his draft price. And you could put him in your wide receiver 2 spot and be fine. And he's a guy that's going in around the 9-10 turn. So that is a tremendous value pick.
Yeah. And Slayton is actually going at about the same point that Shepard is. They're like Slayton's at 108, Shepard's at 105. And so which would I rather have? Well, I'd rather have the volume. I'd rather have Shepard's volume. And really right now I have him projected to have like 20 more targets than what Slayton's going to get. I think Slayton's better as a daily fantasy play just because the explosiveness, the touchdowns. I think Slayton will probably end up with more touchdowns. But as far as fantasy points goes, they'll probably end up with about the same fantasy value. But I just think that Shepard's going to be the steadier hand, the more consistent one that you can actually rely on in season-long leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Slayton's going to get more touchdowns, but it's lead in targets and receptions.
So tell me about your top guy. Who's your top value pick for the upcoming season?
All right, for you is Deebo Samuel, and he is excited about as well. His ADP is currently in around round 5 or 6 as a wide receiver, 27 or 28 off the board. And for rookies, what I like to do is see how they half of the season and what Deebo did over the last 8 games of the season. From week 9 to 17, Deebo Samuel was a wide receiver 7. During that stretch from week 9 to 17, Deebo had more points per game than the following receivers. He had more points per game than Kenny Golladay, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Keelan, Cortland Sutton, and Mike Evans. He was absolutely dominant during that final stretch. And if you were to pace out what his 16 games would look like based upon those final 8 games, he would have 100 targets, 70 receptions, 1,093 receiving yards, 217 rushing yards, and 7 total touchdowns. So I like that extra usage that he has runner, which is just, extra juice on top of what he's already giving you as a receiver. And I absolutely just love this guy's style of play. He's basically a running back with the ball in his hands. And here are some stats that really popped off the page for me in terms of just how dominant and good of a receiver he was last year. His catch rate ranked 5th in the league. He's a yak monster. He got 473 yards for the catch, which was 5th among all wide receivers and 1st among all rookie receivers. He had the 7th most broken tackles and was tackles. And with Emmanuel Sanders gone, that's just going to open up more opportunities for him for more targets. And I have Deebo as a top 20 wide receiver. He's my wide receiver 20, and his ADP is currently around wide receiver 27. So he's a guy that I want to get in round 5 or round 6 in drafts as my receiver 2 or flex.
Well, I got to say, I mean, first of all, last year's crop of wide receivers was really good. I mean, for those rookies came in and did amazingly well. I do think Deebo is going to do better this year, but my biggest problem is just the fact that San Francisco's a run-first offense. They do not throw the ball a lot. There was only 478 pass attempts last year. That's with a healthy Garoppolo for all 16 games, and that was 28th in the league. So it's right in the same level as Kirk Cousins, as Lamar Jackson, and what that means is that he's going to have very uneven consistency. And if you look like during the fantasy playoff weeks last year, the final 4 weeks of the season, he had 10 targets on the first week, 4 in the next, 9 in the next, and then 2 in week 17, which probably was more related to just the fact that they already made the playoffs. But even in the Super Bowl run, 4 targets in the divisional playoffs, 4 targets in the NFC Championship, 12 targets in the Super Bowl. So it's gonna be like that with Deebo, and so if for me again, Deebo seems to be a better daily fantasy pick than a season long. But I like the fact that he's also going to be heavily involved in the run game, like probably 20 touches along with his targets. But again, like I said, I think for season long fantasy, you're going to end up with more weeks than not, where you're going to be like, where the heck did Deebo go? So that's my big concern with him.
Some weeks where it does feel that way, but I think the 49ers, especially towards the end of the year, we're just looking for ways to get the ball into his hands, with short and intermittent passes. So he has downfield skills, but he also has skills in that short game. So they just got the ball in his hands, and I think that they're going to do that this year.
Yeah, I think in that one of his 2-touch games, one of those touches was a touchdown. So it's like, oh, well, he did fine, right? But anyway, all right. So my final player, and this is a player I've been getting in every single draft I can get in the 3rd round, currently going as the 18th running back off the board at around ADP number 35. So right at the end of the 3rd round. So he's easy to get. Le'Veon Bell. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that 2019 didn't happen because I saw what it was. But 3.3 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns do not inspire a lot of confidence, and that's why you're seeing him down here. But the fact is, there was so much working against him last year. He was absolutely in a void for me last season. 2018 he didn't play. Then he moves to a new team, which has a terrible offensive line, really no offensive weapons. The quarterback gets mono and misses a month of play. I mean, it's just like disaster after disaster. It's no wonder he didn't do anything. But this year, I think everything's going to be much better. They improve the offensive line. They improve the weapons. Sam Darnold's healthy. I see high volume here. Let's see here. Last year, he got 245 carries and 78 targets. This year, I'm saying right about the same. 222 carries, 84 targets, over 300 opportunities with the ball for someone in the third round is just incredible. That's absolutely what you want. There's no competition in this backfield. It's Frank Gore and the rookie LaMichael Pirine, who I am not concerned with either of those players. It is going to be the Le'Veon Bell show. And for value, this guy, I have him valued as my RB10. So he should be like a late first, early second pick, but you can get him in the late third round. That's just unbelievable value, and definitely one of those players that can carry you to that fantasy championship for sure.
Yeah, I did my analysis on Le'Veon Bell, and I grade him a fairly valued. To me, he is a very safe pick, and he has a very high floor, but I just don't see the upside with him. So what I like about him is you're getting 250 carries and 80 targets. So you know that the volume is going to be there. You know that he has no competition, but I'm worried about the Jets offensive line. I know that they did some things to improve it. I like the draft pick and Mekhi Becton. So hopefully he's going to give Le'Veon Bell a boost. He's coming off a year where he had his worst yards per carry average of his career at 3.2. If they could get him to even 3.8 or 4 yards per carry, he's going to have a very nice season with at least 1,500 total yards. But the reason I'm not targeting him is I don't think that the touchdowns are going to be there. I know that that's tough to predict on a year-to-year basis, but I'm not a believer in the Jets' offense. Last year, they ranked the worst in total yards and second to worst in total points. And I don't think that they're going to be a good offense this year, and I'm still concerned about that offensive line. So although I think that Le'Veon is a good value in the fourth round, if you want a safe running back 2 with a floor, I just am not sold on the upside.
Yeah, and obviously, the Jets have the worst coach in the NFL, so that's part of that's part of the problem. But I think, second year with the coach, second year in the offensive game plan, he is going to be better than he was last year. I think the overall team, the Jets, will be better. They'll score more points. There will be more opportunities for Le'Veon Bell to do what he does, because he's an elite talent, and he has been for his entire career. And he's only 28. This is like a prime year. This is kind of like, for me, age 28 is kind of like the best year that the running backs have, and then after that they go into decline. So this is like the best you're going to see of Le'Veon Bell with his skills and his vision. And I think that like I said, he's such a low risk play at this point. Like you said, that it's almost, you can't lose on this bet. Worst you're going to get is break
He's
even.
Good for the yardage and the touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think the touchdowns will bounce back. I mean, 4 touchdowns on 320 targets and touches. That's just screams reversion. He's going to revert at least up to like 7, 8, or 9 touchdowns. I mean, and that will make a huge difference in his value for fantasy.
Oh yeah,
sure.
if you guys 7 touchdowns on top of what he's going to be putting up in rushing yards and receiving yards, that he's going to enter into top 15 inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thank you very much, Zach, for joining me today. I do enjoy your picks. I like them. Like I said, of your 3, Mostert, man, that guy, I'm betting by the time we get to August, he's going to be like a early third, late second round pick. I just see him moving up, because people are going to start
Oh, that is
realizing, like, holy cow, this guy is he's going to be amazing for fantasy. So, but anyway, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, and go ahead.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, guys. You could find me at the Fantasy Price Check on YouTube. Just search Fantasy Price Check. I'm on Instagram at Fantasy Price Check, and you could also find me on Twitter. FF Price Check is the handle.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate it. Everybody, please get these guys onto your target list. You got some good value plays here, and we will be back later in the week with actually this weekend with another mock draft. So stay tuned for that. And thank you, Zach. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show. Love to do it again.